Welcome, welcome. We are here for another episode of Go Deeper by G Block. I am so pleased to have our guest here, Frankie Russo, who is a G Block member. He is an Inc. 500 founder who's been won 8 times in a row with 2 companies. He is also an internationally renowned and sought out speaker, and he's really focused on top growth, and he's also a 2 times best-selling author. So we're so delighted to have you and can't wait to dive into this conversation with you. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited.
Amazing. Okay, so let's dive into some questions. So tell us your why. What do you consider to be your purpose or mission in the world, and what experiences in your life shape that?
Okay, yeah. So this feels like a trick question since I've written 2 books on why. But at a very high level, my why is to help other people. And to my purpose is to continuously daily suit myself to be of maximum usefulness to those people around me. Right. And so that might be customers, that might be employees, that's definitely children, it might be people in the community. As I've mentioned before, it also is people that I help to sponsor in addiction journeys as well as codependency journeys and things like that. So there's a lot of different aspects of my life where I end up fulfilling that why. What has really created that was started at a very young age. My parents ran homeless shelters in the inner city, started in Pittsburgh, and then we came to cities in Louisiana. And that really crafted this deeper sense of fulfillment and meaning from helping truly poor individuals and communities. And so that's where that started. I got out of the house and abandoned that for a while. It's kind of where my journey of addiction and alcoholism ramped up. But after about 10 years of that, I finally got to this bottom where I decided to get sober. And what happened was that it was actually getting sober and finding out that the only way to stay sober is to help these other addicts and alcoholics. Helping them stay sober was the only way I was going to stay sober. So it became this new calling in and of itself. It was really powerful. And then over time, then became 2 books that I've written to help translate that same movement into the work world. And then now as a keynote speaker, I mean, that's really all I'm doing is I sold my tech company a couple of years ago. And now I'm full time really helping organizations and individuals unlock the thing that's really holding them back and keeping them from growing. And so that's my why. It's a short story. Of course, I'm a father,
No,
and
it's perfect.
it's a big part of it. So I'd be remiss not to say that. But outside of the house, that's my why.
Wonderful. And what is the one big idea you would like to imbue in the world, and why? What do you think will happen as a result if people were to adopt your one big idea?
Yeah, so I am kind of an idea guy, so I have lots of ideas. But my current idea that's stuck for some years now is an idea called "Love Your Weird." And loving your weird is a movement that is really close to my heart. It's something that has changed both my personal and business relationships. The world around me has shifted. Loving your weird is about creating a culture of more authenticity, more imagination, and more generosity. And so I believe that when people love their weird, their own weird, and then they create a space where they can love each other's weird, and then are able to then explore what can come from that genius. So something about weird that's kind of a fun fact is that it wasn't always spelled Weird. In fact, it was coined years back in England, and it actually was spelled Wyrd. But it wasn't just the spelling.
Oh,
Yeah, it wasn't just the spelling that was different. It was also had a very different meaning. Instead of it being this kind of negative connotation that it has now, which was made kind of went in the negative direction from Shakespeare.
yeah.
Before that, it actually meant the power to control or influence your fate, destiny, and my personal favorite, supernatural qualities, which I also have
Ooh.
explored the idea of that also being your genius. So each individual
Mm.
person has this supernatural quality, a genius inside of them. And so a lot of the work that I do with Love Your Weird is unlocking that. And it turns out once that is unlocked, it is the building blocks for creating the continuous growth that so many people and organizations crave in this new world of work.
I love that. Cool. I'm going to start using that now and
There you go. Yeah,
start confusing people.
hashtag it. Just hashtag it. Love your weird.
We'll put that. We'll use that in G Block just for
Yeah,
you.
anytime. Yeah, it's not for me. It's for the world. So I love your weirds. The
Absolutely.
idea that I'm just passionate about it. I actually went through a divorce 7, 8 years ago, and that's
Mm,
when I really started to identify with how much I had abandoned my own weird. So if you think about your weird being that
mm,
5-year-old, 6, 7-year-old version of Sheila or
yep.
Frankie, that
Yep.
weird kid that we abandoned to some degree because of conditioning or even because of trauma. And so we've hampered some of the most raw gold genius parts of ourselves, and it's by
Mm,
re-engaging and celebrating and bringing that forward on a daily real-time basis that some amazing things can happen. And it happened in my life, and I'm seeing it happen now in other people's lives.
that's incredible. Thank you.
Yeah.
Um, so, what are the ways in which you cultivate meaningful connections? And how does your big idea play into that?
Yeah. So the thing about meaningful connection is that it comes from a place of safety, trust, belonging, that when somebody feels safe to show up as their whole self or show up authentically. And so the way that I cultivate that is by showing up authentically, right? And
Mm,
by leading by that example. Like me loving my own weird is the most important component, because other people then immediately feel safe to talk about things. I mean, we've been talking 5 minutes, and already you know that I'm a drug addict, I'm an alcoholic, I love my weird. So the chances that you and I can probably get into a meaningful conversation quickly are highly likely, right?
mm,
And especially
mhm,
now that the world is, I mean, the title of my third book is Love Your Weird. So like the world is starting to find out. And so everybody that I come in contact with knows like this is going to be authentic. This is going to be
mhm,
raw. It's going to be messy at times. We're going to be celebrating our imagination. And the thing I've learned about connection and belonging in my own life is that if I give first, like I give trust first, I give a helping hand first. And I'm not taking score or constantly measuring how much I've given. That's a space that is hard to be in and not
mm,
also want to reciprocate.
mhm,
And so
mhm.
that's how I've used that big idea to cultivate more connection, especially meaningful, lasting connection.
I love that. You've talked about it a little bit, but feel free to elaborate. So, what are the contributions you currently make in the world? And again, going back to your big idea, how does
Yeah.
that play into that?
Yeah. So, Mike, I try to make contributions multiple times a day. They're not all financial. Like when I was young, I thought, oh, you're either like in Africa or in the homeless shelter, or you're donating money. And as I've explored all the many things in between those two options, it's been really powerful for me. So throughout the day, it might be 5, 6 phone calls with somebody who's struggling with addiction or codependency. It could be volunteering for a podcast for G Block to share what I've learned and what I have and what I want to give to the world for free. You know, this
Mm-hmm.
isn't a paid session. And
Yeah.
so those are some of the ways. Obviously, like this trickles into my own children. So I've got 6 children, which is they're kind of in the weird stage right now. So I'm constantly contributing there, and who knows what those 6 children will go on to do and impact. But constantly looking for ways that I can empower someone else that can then multiply into more impact. Those are the
Mm-hmm.
things I look for. It's the spirit of generosity and abundance is critical. It's sometimes counterintuitive
Mm,
to the world that we live in, right? That has taught us like looking out for number one, let's not worry about imagination. Let's focus on knowledge. So there's a lot of things that are contradictory to what I'm saying. But what I've found is that I've been able to unlock some very incredible things in like the physical world,
mm-hmm.
and like when we like I only really care about the credibility things that you mentioned previously with business and things like that, only because it gives me a forum to be able to
Mm-hmm.
talk about what really matters, especially because I tested these things and got what most people want in the
Mm-hmm.
capitalistic era that we're in,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
which is top line growth, profitability, all these KPIs. But the fact is that I believe and I know that there can be a world where you have all that stuff,
Mm-hmm.
that capitalism wants, and still not have hundreds of, dead bodies behind you. You can
Mm,
have it both. In fact, you can make it more sustainable. What you want will be more sustainable if you do this type of mentality, this type of work, these types of frameworks to empower the genius in all of the people that work for you.
wow. Thank you. That's beautiful. Um, so what communities are you a part of and why? How do they add
Yeah.
value to your life?
Yeah. So in addition to being part of several 12-step communities, I'm also a part of a community called Impact 11, which has been an incredible community for me of other people in the same thing that I'm doing. Thought
Mm,
leaders that actually want to create an impact on the world. They're also authors. So it's been really awesome to go from being like kind of always the leader in most rooms to now being more of a peer. Impact
mm,
11 gave that to me, and it's been incredible. I'm in a community called Onsite, which has been this other journey of experiential therapy and things that have also helped me with unlocking Love Your Weird. So that's played a big contributing part. I'm in a group called the Outliers, which is a newer group, which is fun. And then now, of course, G Block. But I look for communities of people that love their weird. I look for communities that that believe that the world can be more than it is, and the crazies, if you will, the weirdos. And if there's a community that has those, that's my community. So I'm in several. I'm not always like the best at being like the treasurer or the secretary or that member, but if you're looking for a member that is going to give and not take score and be a big part of helping you along with your journey, then that's me.
Amazing. So what are some steps and that we can take, maybe like, let's say like 2 or 3 steps that we can take here in G Block to, first of all, figure out or maybe articulate our weird
Yeah.
and and to love that. Like how do we do that?
Yeah, so there's a couple of first kind of gateway drugs into the weird, okay? And so one of them, it all revolves around this idea that first and foremost, it's got to have this core value of authenticity. So I call
Mm,
it getting honest. And so a lot of times it's about getting honest with the parts of ourselves that we've been in denial or been not showing up with and really exploring why. Now the answer to why people don't show up as their weird self is always boils down to one word: fear.
mm,
Okay,
mhm,
so there's a relationship with fear that we're all very, very in touch with, more so sometimes than love, or and definitely more than weird, because
mhm,
weird is like kind of the opposite of what we're taught to be, especially in business. So the first thing is being willing to get honest with myself about what masks am I wearing, right? So
mhm,
this is a individual inventory is where this starts.
mhm,
And then also if you are in the charge of like G Block or of an organization, how am I creating a space where people feel safe and that they can trust that if they do show up with that it's not going to have a negative impact.
mhm,
So you've got to first figure out, where am I not showing up? Because sometimes you're not always going to. I don't walk into a room and double check that it's safe before I show up as weird. I didn't double check what G Block was going to do with this stuff before I showed up as weird. So eventually, over time, you'll build up a confidence level where you don't care what space you're in. You're the one bringing the safety. You're
mhm,
bringing the trust, because you know that it's more valuable to me to show up and love my weird than it is to be afraid of what happens if I do.
mhm,
And so
mhm,
that's where you have to really start inventorying it. And another thing that's been really helpful is this idea of really like breaking down the fear from like, what can I control and what can't I control? So that this is a very simple thing that a lot of times gets mixed up. And so really understanding like, what is my part in whatever it is that I'm trying to solve. So if that's making more of a culture weird or whatever the problem I'm trying to solve, understanding what I can impact, okay, and what I can't, and
mm,
separating those and really getting rid of the what I can't and making sure that I'm only trying to solve problems based on what I can control. That one thing can go a long way. And then you start getting into like, how are we going to use imagination and to create a new solution? It's a solution within a certain subset. It's not like you're just going to try to solve all problems.
right.
You're going to solve the ones that you know you can have an impact on, and then you're going to look for new ways instead of the old way to solve that problem. And that's where the beginnings of unlocking growth comes from.
That's amazing. Very helpful. So let's say that I put you in charge of G Block tomorrow.
All right.
what is what is one thing that you would love to do and do with the community, if anything?
Yeah. The main thing that I would do is I would take a deeper look on how the community is currently structured, and I'll be honest, I don't know, right? I'm brand new, so I'd be
It's all
lying if
good.
I told you. So I'm completely y'all might already do all this. I don't know. But the first thing I would do is I would really look at is there anything that's holding us back or that's blocking our ability to create these connections, to create a global connection that's like a neighborhood block. So that's the main thing is like, is there something about what our core mission is or our why as G Block that is that we want to have that's not actually happening? So I would first evaluate and inventory, is there something keeping us from fulfilling our mission that we set out to do? And then from there, I would double click on what are those issues and what are new ways we could experiment around a solution that we're all aligned on.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. Our 15 minutes went by pretty fast.
Has
Thank you
it
so
been
much for
15?
being on this. Yeah, so thank you so much.
There you have it.
And
15
for
minutes.
your contributions. I'm a big fan of the Love Your Weird. I'm going to take that with me. So
There you
thank
go.
you.
There you go. We got another person on the Love Your Weird bandwagon. I love it. Well, Sheila, thanks so much. This was a blast.